This time, Harry Redknapp takes Portsmouth into the big time, and MOGUN BAGAN, India's answer to escape to victory.
And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a while over forever and more. And it's no, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a while over forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which fans attempt to rank the greatest teams ever. Sometimes, like Geoff Hurst's second goal in the 1966 World Cup final, it can just be too close to call. Other times, like Roy Carroll dragging back Pedro Mendes' shot from 5 yards behind the goal line, there's no need to debate it at all. But we debate it anyway. This week, we will mostly be talking about Portsmouth, so I'll leave you to work out which category we're likely to be talking about. My name's Graham Dunn. Joining me as ever is the man with more facts to hand than Rafa Benitez. It's Jamie Rooney.
Not always accurate facts as well. As we're learning, kind of do this research and kind of go back to the archives of my very old head. And some things I believe are absolutely accurate. And then I kind of learn afterwards, I may have got that wrong. I may have got that one wrong as well. But I'm hoping to minimise my mistakes as best as possible. I don't want to have a Roy Carroll performance tonight.
Roy Carroll. Joining us down from the sunny south coast is on over there in your house in Southampton. I think it's Jamie Wilson.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Jamie. Lovely to be here. You may have got the positioning of my house geographically incorrect, but I'll let you off on this occasion.
I for some reason, I always get Southampton and Portsmouth mixed up. It's
you do, don't you? Yes, you do.
Pedro Mendes who goes on to be a bit of a star of this Pompey team we're going to talk about shortly.
Oh, yes. We'll get into Pedro later.
When we have people on, we quite often talk about the good things about the teams. I always like to bring up a player who maybe wasn't part of the greatest era of that side. So, I like to think of your role as, but you're very much the Rory Allen of the pod here.
You know what? The interesting thing is, I used to really like Rory Allen, and I saw him. Yeah, this is going too off the wall here, isn't it? A bit, but I saw him in his final game in a Pompey shirt. It was an away game, and he broke, poor lad. He broke his ankle for about the second or third time, and was carried off. I think it was at Hillsborough. It was either Hillsborough or Bramall Lane. It was certainly Sheffield, one or the other. But we always looked like a player. But then, as you probably know, Graham, he decided to quit his professional footballing career and go and watch cricket for his sins. So he could have been a great player.
It is an extraordinary story. He basically cashed in the rest of his contract. He had like 9 months left. And just said, "No, I'm going off to see the Ashes. I'll become part of the Barmy Army."
Right. That's right. We paid £1 million for him. He was our first £1 million player.
Now, there's a small bit of business I need to pick up from. Well, I'm going to confront it because I let it go a couple of weeks ago. We had Declan on talking about Everton, and as part of that, he mentioned a player who has a bit of a shared history for myself and Jamie. And I had no idea that he ever even played for Everton, because I can only think of him playing for one team, and that's Alan Bailey. Surely the most 1970s footballer ever to play his entire career in the 1980s, or virtually most of it. Alan Bailey, he's a legend in Portsmouth, isn't he? And he's probably a legend for one horrible game.
One great game. And the story about Alan Bailey, yes, he's still greatly revered down here. We're coming up to we're on our 125th birthday celebration year. And they got some of the old players to come down actually a couple of weeks ago into one of the games. And Bailey was one of the 50 or so they had lined up there. Still got a massive cheer from the Fratton end, still very much revered. And just before you get to the game I know you're going to talk about, which is a game of legend still down here, Slightly meaningless for us. It didn't mean we went up or anything. But Alan Biley, I met, I was at a soccer school when I was about 11 or 12. And this sealed the deal for me as being a Pompey fan, because I went to Mick Mellow's soccer school over Easter. And one of the things was they took you to Fratton Park after a training session. I went in there, and the great Alan Biley, and I was still formulating I was still kind of a Liverpool fan, as you are when you're a kid, and you kind of grow up out of it, and then you support your local team. But I went in there, and the great Alan Biley was there with the kind of Wurzel Gummidge straw hair coming down, great beaming smile, and he lined us all up. And I remember him, smiling and sort of, so what's your name? And he said, yeah, I'm Jamie. It's like, lovely to meet you, Jamie. I've still got the autograph upstairs. And it was like from that moment, like the great Alan Biley had spoken to me, and I was kind of hooked from that day. But I'm going to let you talk about that game, Graham, because I think you'll have a better angle on it than me.
I did make myself watch it again. It's a Christmas game. It's in Oxford's glorious triumph up the table in 1984. Jim Smith's glorious team are making way through there. It's in December, and it's got everything you'd expect for 1984. Pitch is absolutely belting down with rain. It's a horror show mud. Oxford go one up. There's a clear red card of events to prevent us going two up in that as well. And Alan Biley gets an equaliser about 3-4 minutes from the end of the game. He then proceeds to get a winner for Pompey in injury time. Injury time, which is caused because that game had what's the opposite of a streak? Had a pitch invader dressed in a Santa Claus outfit. In my mind, it was essentially Dan Aykroyd from Trading Places coming in, but half salmons.
It's a great moment, obviously, for Pompey. And again, it's kind of meaningless for us. It doesn't mean we go up or anything like that. I think we
you don't go up. We go up.
I was going to say we just delay your promotion party, which is pleasure in itself from my perspective. But no, it's great. I don't think they ever found out who the Santa Claus was.
I will put a link into that on the social, because the noise that day is unbelievable when you listen back to it. It's and Fratton Park always a pretty horrendous place to go to, both as a player and a supporter, obviously. But anyway, that's more than enough reminiscing over slightly crappy teams. We're here to talk about Harry Redknapp's Portsmouth, a period of unheralded greatness, and we're going to talk about them after this. So we are talking about Portsmouth, and we're talking about Harry Redknapp's kind of overhaul of that team. What I love about this whole Harry Redknapp period, which goes on for much longer than certainly that I had remembered. In my mind, it was a couple of years. And looking back through it, it goes on for, there's 5-6 years worth of it in one form or another, albeit with an interruption. What I love about it is the managerial spells are bookended by him replacing Arsenal legends, or being replaced by Arsenal. So he replaces one Arsenal legend, the brilliant Graham Rix, as manager, who proved to be a less successful manager whose spell at Portsmouth, I think, was only bettered by an equally disappointing spell at Oxford. At the end of his spell there, he's replaced by Tony Adams.
He is indeed.
A man whose disappointing spell at Portsmouth is only to be bettered by his disappointing spell managing Wickham. So a highly impressive feat. But Jamie, and I'll say Pompey Jamie here, he walks through the door at a pretty dark time for Portsmouth, doesn't he?
He does indeed, yeah. I was a season ticket holder then at that time, so my excitement had been trying to stay up on the last day of the season for a good number of years. So that had been what I'd expected as a Pompey fan. You try and stay in the Championship or League One as it was then, Second Division. I can't remember. They changed the names of these things, but yeah, that was my expectation. That was my level. And Graham Rix had only done what previous managers had done and managed to just keep us in that season. But sort of rolling it back, we had some poor chairman who didn't have any money. And earlier on that season, we'd got Milan Mandrick, who was a guy who'd made his load of money in the States, in Silicon Valley, big football fan, friend of George Best. He'd also been friends with Redknapp because Redknapp had played football in the States, I believe. So there was a sort of a shared friendship there. And so Milan Mandrick had got Redknapp to come in as a director of football. Redknapp had been sacked by West Ham not long before, so it kind of got him ticking over. And so there was kind of the power behind the throne there already. You know, Ricks knew, I think his time was up. And Milan Mandrick was letting Redknapp get his feet under the table, I think, to sort of slot in. So that was kind of the precursor to it all.
And for a second tier side, I think that's what we call them in this podcast as we try to find our way around, navigate our way around Division 2, Division 1 Championship. But a second tier side, I mean, Redknapp does what Redknapp always does, or always seems to have done throughout his career. He conjures a way of getting some top players into the team, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I mean, he comes in and he rips it up. Basically, there's a handful of players who managed to sort of survive the cull from the Graham Ricks era through to the next season. But you know, he's bringing in the likes of Arjan Dazoo. He's bringing in the likes of Steve Stone, Tim Sherwood, Yakubu. Todorov was an interesting one as well. This guy from West Ham who hadn't been playing for a season because he'd had some weird clause with his Bulgarian parent club where if he played too many games for West Ham, they had to pay sort of 500,000. So, but the absolute killer masterstroke was getting this guy called Paul Merson in, who I'd seen playing as a left midfielder for Arsenal and England, and he had him playing as a number 10, and he got him in just on the eve of the season, I think, literally a couple of days before we rolled, and he was amazing. You know, arguably one of the best players I've ever seen in a Pompey shirt. So yeah, the good times started to roll.
I found a brilliant website which listed all 91 signings that Harry Redknapp made in his time at Portsmouth. Does anyone remember the first signing he made?
Ooh, I like that. Go on, no, go for it, Graham. You give us the trivia.
So his first signing apparently is Eddie Howe.
Wow.
Yes. Very good.
He was a Bournemouth.
I saw the 12
legend.
minutes of Eddie Howe's Pompey career, actually, because he played the first game of the season when we won the championship, and I think it was after 12 minutes. So yeah, you'll have to look that one up. And Eddie Howe, of course, was a very classy defender for Bournemouth at the time. The poor fella, I think he dislocated his kneecap. He never played again that season for us, as far as I'm aware. I think he came back a year later and played a couple of games, but just wasn't the same player. But yeah,
I think with Redknapp as well,
yes.
What gets a lot is that the whole kind of wheeler dealer thing, which he's been tagged with rather unfairly. I think he had a really good eye for talent, and I think he had a clear identity of what players he wanted and how they wanted to shape them. Because it wasn't just the overhaul he did in his first spell at Pompey, and I think Jamie, you're absolutely right. I think it was about 40 players in, 40 players out, so he's completely changed the whole landscape of the things. But at Bournemouth, he was able to identify players like Steve Claridge and Efe Nkoku and Jimmy Quinn. And he was doing that on a low budget, but he was also selling. So he was balancing the book generally most of the time. And West Ham as well, Al Berkovic, Paulo Di Canio. And once again, he's not overspending. He's getting money back in from what he's spending. And I think it kind of gets lost in the qualities of Harry Redknapp. I don't know why. Maybe it is his charisma, his personality. But I don't think he gets enough credit for being a pretty astute guy in the transfer market.
Totally agree, Jamie. I mean, he, even to this day now, after the success he brought to Portsmouth, the mere fact that he decided to move to a club just round the corner from us midway through after an emotional spat with our chairman, it still divides the Pompey fans massively. But if we try and take the emotion out of it, which you can't really do in football, I know, but Redknapp played the greatest football I've ever seen at Fratton Park. And he had an eye, as you rightly say, had an eye for top quality players. And he also knew how to manage them. You read the books around it, and his man and management skills are second to none. The likes of Sol Campbell, later on in his Pompey time, and Paul Merson, players coming to the autumn of their careers, Steve Stones. But, he wouldn't make them train all day. He'd let them do what they wanted to do. If they needed to go and have a massage for 2 days, he'd let them go and do that, as long as they performed on the Saturday, and they all did. But what, interestingly, Jamie, to your point again, I don't think he gets enough credit for this, because he filled that team with some hugely talented, energetic young players. So you had the likes of Merson, who was an absolute the pivot in the team. Everything good kind of came through. You know, you had the striker in Todorov who got match fit and was razor sharp. But you had Matt Taylor as our left wing back. I was reading the other day how apparently Matty Taylor had a VO2 max of that of an Olympic long distance runner. So that's the, you know, for those who don't know, Graham, that's the that's the kind of fitness levels you need. So he had unbelievable fitness levels. You had Gary O'Neill in there, who's not doing a bad job down at Bournemouth as manager now, but incredible energy there. We had a guy called Nigel Quasi that we got from Forest, and you know, Quasi should have played at a higher level, really, but enormous energy in these guys. And then you had the sprinkling of great skill and guile in the likes of Merson. But you know, the team that finished that season was an unbelievably strong team and extremely well put together.
And that team runs away with the league to some extent, doesn't it? It's a pretty handsome victory. It is.
I remember sweating. We were racing against Leicester. It was Leicester. We were really up against. I think Sheffield United as well in there, and Norwich and those kind of guys. But you know,
that could be any season ever. Sheffield United, Norwich. Yeah,
yes. Yeah, it's kind of true. But it was. Yeah, you know, you're sweating about it. But at the end of the day, I think we won the league by 6 clear points.
The first season back in the Premiership, he goes and supplements, doesn't he? He brings in notably Sheringham and Patrick Berger.
Patrick Berger, one of my favourite players. He was the kind of guy who would play it so simple in the first 2/3 of the pitch and then explode in the final third. And you know, I loved him so much. I even got a T-shirt, Graham. You may remember.
The only person in the Patrick Berger t-shirt. Unbelievably, me and Jamie were talking to Shane, who's on one of our other, previous podcasts, who also he's a Liverpool fan, and he labelled Patrick Berger as his favourite player as well.
Really? I often thought he got a bit of stick from Liverpool fans. I remember beating Liverpool, and Phil Thompson, I think, was either the assistant manager or something at the time, and made some derogatory comment like, "That's the most I've ever seen Patrick Berger run," or something like that. But no, Berger was brilliant. But I think he was one of those players where, you know, Redknapp man management skills again, big these guys up, put his arm around them, let them play with freedom, and let the younger lads, you know, do all the real hard work and let the talented guys do the talented stuff. Kind of makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Jamie, I think you were turning, when we were talking to Shane, you were turning your nose up a bit at Patrick Berger being a star player. But this is coming from someone whose own favourite player was Jesper Olsen. So
this is a fact. Yes, at one point in my life, Jesper Olsen was my favourite player, and I can see the similarities with Patrick Berger.
Yeah, well,
bit of a glamour player, not really interested in doing too much defending, wanting to go forward all the time, and doing all the aesthetically pleasing things in the game.
Sorry, I'm still reeling at the Jesper Olsen one. I
was at Old Trafford. I was on my 21st birthday. I went to Old Trafford, and I was lucky enough, or unfortunate enough, whoever would describe it, to be interviewed for the United magazine. The first season they won the Premier League, so it's a big team. You got Cantona, Hughes, and Robson, Bruce, and Pallister. And I was asked who my favourite player was, and I just felt I'm just going to say something a bit left field, and literally went to the left field and said Jesper Olsen, because I always had a soft spot for Jesper Olsen. And then when it came out, and my friends saw it, I got a bit of stick for that. Jesper Olsen, not Cantona, not Robson. Jesper Olsen. You mean Jesper Olsen? Not even Johnny Sieverbeck, but Jesper Olsen.
So with Teddy Sheringham and Patrick Berger, Portsmouth settled well into that league. That first season they finished 13th, but the Redknapp story starts to go a bit off the rails temporarily, doesn't it? Because he leaves, doesn't he? How come Harry Redknapp ended up leaving Portsmouth at this great era?
So we go back to the Milan Mandrick, Harry Redknapp relationship, and they've always had quite a tempestuous, emotional engagement there. And it finally erupts now, whether that's over not being able to sign the player he wants, whether that's that there were rumours that Milan Mandrick thought that Jim Smith was, not adding much to the team. So anyway, it all ends in tears, and the most painful thing, of course, that Redknapp can do to a Pompey chairman or Pompey fan base is to go and join Southampton, which of course is exactly what he goes and does. And I mean, yeah, it is kind of laughable if you're not a Pompey fan. So, you know, we try to console ourselves by saying, you know, Agent Redknapp's gone to Southampton to take them down that season, you know, and he'll be back. And actually, that's kind of how it worked out. But at the time, it was extremely painful. Yeah.
I saw pictures when I was doing some research on this, and you've touched on the emotions of football, and they are right to the core. It's so important. It does make you do some balmy things. And I saw pictures of people in the stand when Harry Redknapp came back to play against Portsmouth as a Southampton manager, and special T-shirts had been made with some pretty choice language on it. And
oh yeah,
I've seen a lot of football, but I'd never seen somebody who'd actually gone and made bespoke T-shirts to vent their displeasure at joining a rival.
Obviously, I went to the game, and it was an electric atmosphere. They'd done a bubble for the Southampton fans, you know, fearful that they were going to get mobbed on the way in. So, and someone had written on a huge bedspread, you know, "Welcome to hell" across the across one of the only ways into Portsmouth. Well, and then of course, Redknapp is escorted to the away dugout by two ex-SAS soldiers. Such was the fear that someone was going to jump out the crowd and try and do him. And actually, I think Fratton Park, as you may know to your cost or whatever, but it's pretty tight around the pitch there. Yes. And so when the crowd are up for it and they're not very happy, you know, you can feel it. And you could see a few of those Southampton, understandably, didn't quite fancy taking those throw-ons with their back to the crowd there. So yeah, that was quite an amazing game.
Now, Redknapp is only at Southampton for a very short period. It does coincide with one of the weirder things, and, you know, I'm confident we're never going to talk about the Southampton 2005 team in this podcast ever, but it coincides with that weird period where Clive Woodward comes in as the director of football or something.
Yeah, Rupert Lowe, didn't he, was the chairman down there at the time and got Clive Woodward in. And weirdly, I was listening to a podcast where Clive Woodward was talking about actually that Redknapp, from his perspective anyway, whether this was true or not, but, you know, apparently was, you know, very good to him and gave him a lot of time and everything else. But yeah, very odd. It was an odd time, yeah, for sure.
When Woodward comes in, he's the precursor to Ted Lasso, I think.
Just ahead of his time.
Totally.
So Portsmouth, without Harry Redknapp, are not hugely successful. They have the great Alain Perrin is in charge. The Jerry Seinfeld lookalike, as I remember him being.
Very good, yeah.
So it gets to, I think, about halfway through the following season, Portsmouth struggling a bit, and there's a change in ownership, isn't there? Is that what kind of heralds his return?
Yeah. So what happens here is that it's not going, as far as I can work out, it wasn't going very well at Southampton. You know, they go down. They're in the second tier as we've declared it, and we're not going very well either. And I think Milan realised that we were getting relegated, and so it all sort of, the planets realigned. They kissed and made up, and unbelievably, he returned.
I mean, you did very nearly go down that year, didn't you? I mean, you were in pretty dire straits.
We're talking about the 2005-2006 season. Yeah. So the interesting points here from a history side is that, Milan also sells 50% of his share to a guy called Sasha Gaidamak, who's this Israeli/Russian businessman, we'll call him. And this allows extra money to be pumped in, but this is also the start of our financial meltdown and downfall, but that doesn't really appear until the next couple of years. We've suddenly got a lot of more financial investment and muscle. Redknapp's made up with Milan. There's a bit more money there. And so we're riding the wave in the next couple of years of some quite amazing signings start coming through the door.
Yeah, so I mean, the following season, I mean, it's unbelievable, the players that come in there. And actually, Portsmouth, for the first time, look as though they belong, you know, in that top half of the elite league, don't they? I mean, you have Sol Campbell, Distan. Can you believe those players were playing for you?
No, not at all. I'll be blatantly honest. I mean, we got David James in goal. I've brought up on Alan Knight. He was fantastic for us, but David James was different world. I say you've got Sol Campbell, you've got Carnu rocks up as well.
And anyone know what age he was at that time?
Nobody. I still don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody really knew. I think someone was saying he was possibly in his 40s, but I can't believe that's true when he played for us. But you don't really know.
Freddie Adu, the American, there was always question marks over his age. And I think when he played in the Under-17 World Cup for the USA, I think he was in his 40s.
Yeah, it's just nobody honestly knows. But again, Redknapp got the best out of these guys. Incredible player for us. Not only, as I say, the following year when it all comes good.
It was a real mix of players as well, especially as we focus towards the 07-08 team. It's a real collective mix. It wasn't players just around Europe. There was a big core African contingent as well. Players from France. I think of the players that were used in the 07-08 season, I think they came from almost 14 different countries, which is an incredible mix. And I think this is testament as well back to Redknapp's man management, when you're kind of managing that kind of cultural bowl and to get the best out of those players. I mean, they're quality players. I mean, you haven't mentioned, one of my favourites was Lassie Diarra, who I just thought was a fantastic technical player with a great eye for quality passes and, just a fantastic player. But again, this goes back to where Redknapp probably doesn't get the right amount of credit, because he's really taken a bunch of guys from different parts of the world and he's shaped them into a quality football team.
Diarra was also one of my all-time faves. If you look at the Pompey polls that come out every now and again, Diarra's always in the top 3 or 4. And he only played for us for a year. He was unbelievable.
He joins a decent side at the end of that, doesn't he? He joins a proper side.
Oh, who's that?
He go to Juventus or someone.
I think it's Real Madrid, isn't it?
Real Madrid,
and
It is Real Madrid for about 20 million or something.
Yeah, Pompey made such a profit on him as well. It's incredible.
Yeah, they did. You wonder where that money went, but that's another time, another podcast. But no, honestly, some amazing players that we had coming in, and you could see that as well. We were such a solid, side, very hard to beat, and I think, that 2007-2008 team, gets our highest finish in the league, and of course, is the famed for winning the FA Cup, of course.
Well, we have to get onto that FA Cup run, which is an extraordinary thing, really. I suppose the elephant in the room in this particular bit of the podcast is the game at which I think it becomes apparent Portsmouth are going to win it, which is that quarter-final up at Old Trafford.
Yeah, it was. And I'd been to. It was a game I didn't go to personally. I'd been to Old Trafford the season before when we got stuffed 4-1. Or not the season before. It was when we won the championship. I remember it. I was in a pub watching the game. It wasn't in Portsmouth, so it was quite a quiet pub. It was on the outskirts of Southampton, so no one was really bothered. That game, I sat there open-mouthed. It's still one of the most amazing games I think I've ever certainly watched on telly, in terms of, when they say your name's on the cup, that game is built for that cliche, because I was watching the game and every time Man United got through and it looked like they were going to score, and James would tip one onto the post, or Carrick would unbelievably miss by Distan making up. It's like the Gaza in the Euros that time, where you just expect him to score. And I'm always amazed Carrick doesn't score that goal. Distan covers 5 meters in about 1 second and manages to kind of tangle the ball away. And Sol Campbell makes some unbelievable tackles, and then of course the fates come into play, because Van der Sar gets an injury, doesn't he, at half time? So he's subbed and Thomas Kuszczak comes on. We've got Milan Baroš on loan, who's barely scored for us and done nothing in the time we've had him. And then there's that moment where he falls over Kuszczak's leg. He gets sent off, and then Rio Ferdinand has to go and goal. And I was in the pub because, of course, I was expecting us to lose that game. And, of course, you've got now to the 75th minute or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, my God, we've got a penalty at Old Trafford. There's 15 minutes to go, and we've got we haven't got the reserve keeper in goal. We've got a player in goal, and they're down to 10 men. This gives us a real chance here. And I don't think I've ever been as nervous when Sully Montari stepped up for that. And fair play to him, because, again, more pressure really when you've got to try and beat a player and go. And Ferdinand doesn't do bad with that save either. Another inch or two, you might have got it. But unbelievable game.
Jamie, you must you remember that game fondly as well.
I do. In all honesty, it's one of the games that's never really got away from me as a United fan, and I don't think I've ever got over it because Jamie's absolutely right. I mean, that was a special United team. That really was. I think we haven't covered United yet, but for me, that's probably one of the best, if not the best United team because of how they played and how Ferguson had evolved as a coach. And that quarter final, I remember going into it, and I think only Chelsea of the big four were in the quarter final, and I think it was only Portsmouth was the only other Premier League team, and the other five were made up of teams from the Championship or below. And United were on a pretty decent run, and I felt confident that another treble was just destined to happen. And they went on and won the league. They won the Champions League in that season. But the quarterfinals it was incredible. And I mean, full credit to Portsmouth for the way they just hung in. I mean, James is absolutely right. I think how United didn't score on that day is just incredible. And I think that's one of the things they're probably never getting over. But I do think it's one of those times where luck is on your side. I mean, I don't know if you remember, it was early on in the game. I think Ronaldo gets knocked over by Distan. It looks like a penalty kick to me. I think if we had VAR in play then, and the sending off, I mean, it is remarkable. 3 goalkeepers. We talked about this before on a podcast, Graham, 3 goalkeepers. Martin Atkinson, I think he got lost in the moment and he forgot the rules because when Krisak does take Barros out, and Barros does really well to buy it, actually. He's a smart player because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
You could,
absolutely.
I could see how some United fans could say it's not a penalty. For me, it was always a penalty because he's impeded the player. But you've got Anderson and Rooney behind him. Kusak's not even the second to last man. He's the third last man. And the rules at the time was last man. So you're kind of smarting from the penalty in the first half. You've then seen these incredible options to score, which they've failed to take. And the Carrick one is unbelievable. And I think it just bounces off his other leg. Why is this done enough time? And then you got Atkinson sending off a player when he doesn't know the rules of the game. So I'm over it from a Portsmouth because it's wonderful for them. But I remember at the time I felt as a United fan so sore about that game, and it has stayed with me.
That Michael Carrick miss it's just inconceivable that doesn't go in. Exactly as Jamie says, it suddenly opens up. You know, the FA Cup opens up in an extraordinary way. You've got a couple of non-league teams and a pub team there and yourselves. So
I think West Brom fans and Cardiff fans would be very upset with that comment.
But it does open up. You know, it's there. I mean, what's interesting, and it's sort of a position Pompey have never really been in before, where actually the pressure is on them to deliver. The expectation is on them to deliver, isn't it?
It was very odd being a fan at that point because just again, I can picture where I was when watching that game and how that progressed and thinking, and that moment when you think, oh my God, we might win this game, and if we win this game, it opens up for us. You know, we're going to Wembley for the semis at the very least. And then once we'd won that game, and you saw how the draw panned out, I think Chelsea lost, didn't they, or something in the quarterfinals as well. And so the sheer elation and joy, thinking we're going to Wembley in a semi-final, we've got a real chance of winning the FA Cup, and then made me think, oh, we've got a chance to win the FA Cup, and feeling almost sick with the pressure of thinking, if we blow this now, we'll never get a better chance than this. And I'll never come back from this if we don't win it from here. And that's my overriding memory of that cup run, is feeling sick with fear during the West Brom game where we bundle it in 1-0, and then being utterly sick with fear during the final, thinking, you know, and there were a number of friends helpfully pointing out that, you know, if you lose this one as a Pompey fan, Jamie, we will never let you forget it. You know, helpful things like that. Yeah, just utter relief when we won it, and it wasn't a great game maybe just because I was living in so much fear throughout it, but. You know, bundled in it was a goalkeeper mistake, really. And Kano was there again to scoop it in from about a yard out. winger John Utaka, who had, shall we say, mixed fortunes. He paid a lot of money for him and did very little. I think he was one of those players that had an enormous amount of skill and didn't really show it. But he did for what put that cross in, and Carney scoops in the rebound, and the rest is history, as they say.
I had forgotten this when I was thinking about which notoriously poor Portsmouth signing I should pick. I was immediately headed to John Utaka, and then I was amazed that he actually played 90-odd games and did score a few and did set up the cup final winner. And I think, do you know, actually, though his legacy is, I suppose he's one of the players who kind of ends up kind of overstaying his welcome, I guess, when the money runs out, which is probably why his legacy isn't seen as gloriously as having set up Portsmouth's greatest moment.
I think the problem with John Utaka was that he was one of those players who you could see he had an enormous amount of skill and everything else. And when you just don't see a player kind of deliver it on a more consistent basis, that's when it sort of gets frustrating. But I suppose you can't argue with the fact he did the assist for the cup final winning goal. So you probably need to give him a bit of slack for that.
Put it into context. When was the last time Pompey had won something?
Yeah, well, it depends how you want to frame that. I mean, the last FA Cup win, Graham, was of course 1939, as we all know. So it was a few years. Of course, though, that we are famously the team that have held the FA Cup for the longest amount of time uninterrupted. Of course. It did happen to coincide with the Second World War, so we had to hang on to the cup until they replayed it again. But we'll take what we can. So yeah, it was a fair old while since we'd won anything. We'd won a major trophy. Let's put it that way.
It is an extraordinary achievement, and at that stage, then Portsmouth do look as though they look as though they belong. They finish top. They're 2 top 10 finishes. They've won the FA Cup. About to embark on Europe. But it starts to unravel a bit, and within a few months, Redknapp's gone, isn't he?
Yes, so Redknapp's off to Spurs. I think what happens is again you read the stuff. He wanted to build on that team and take it further. The money had just started to dry up at that point from Sasha Gajdamak, and there were rumblings of financial mismanagement going on and all sorts. So I think Redknapp's famously quoted as parting shot is I think Pompey needed the payoff from Spurs, needed the money. So again, that didn't go down too well with Pompey fans at the time. So yeah, Redknapp jumped ship, I think in about the November time, doesn't he? And yeah, and then it's all starting to unravel at that point. We're starting to offload some of the big players. Diarra is sold for 20 odd million. The team is starting to be broken up. Then Tony Adams becomes manager, and we've entered Europe. We've managed to get through the pre-group game, and we have one of the greatest moments again in my football watching career.
We then come to the AC Milan, one of Europe's greatest teams, greatest names, coming down to Fratton Park. I mean, what was that like?
To this day, it's still the greatest atmosphere I've ever experienced in a football ground. So just every fan was up for it. So they'd given out all these flags and things as well, I think, if I recall. So the whole place was a mixture of colour and noise. And you've got AC Milan, and this was AC Milan with Kaká, Gattuso, Shevchenko, Inzaghi, Seedorf, Pirlo, Ronaldinho in their side. I mean, and we had to. I remember we'd lost a couple of our midfield players at that point. So we had, Richard Hughes was up against Gattuso. Now Richard Hughes was a very good player, and we got him from Bournemouth, but he was more of a squad player. And we had Glenn Little, formerly of the likes of Reading, playing up against these guys. Neither Glenn Little or Richard Hughes had really played much in our glory times. And they were playing against AC Milan. We still had the likes of Crouchy up front and that. So we still had a few decent players in there. But in fairness, Richard Hughes had the greatest game I think I've ever seen a midfield player play. But then he kind of needed to against those guys. But yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, you had to pinch yourself seeing these guys on the pitch. And we went 2-0 up. and the place is in almost disbelief. But, even then I was watching thinking, the thing about great players, as we all know, isn't it? They're great players because they do great things and they produce when it really matters. And I still remember, Ronaldinho, I don't think he started the game, but he was there for that free kick in about the 70, even might have been later than that, about 84th minute, something like that. We're 6-7 minutes away from beating AC Milan. Ronaldinho comes on and absolutely hits a worldy free kick. And then, Inzaghi, who's done absolutely nothing all game, sniffs one out, in injury time to make it 2-2. But I've got to be honest, I wasn't too crestfallen at the end of it. I mean, to come away 2-2 and having seen those players, at Fratton Park was just unreal. So yeah, and that's probably, I remember saying to someone, after Pompey won the FA Cup, I should probably quit following Pompey because it won't get any better than that. And then I remember having that moment again after watching AC Milan and thinking it's only going to go downhill from here. And how right I was, really.
Well, it definitely does go downhill. We won't dwell on that too much. But I guess the question: this Portsmouth team are one of those which really go for it. I have some unbelievable moments and experiences. The price they paid is that 15, 20 years on, they're still sort of working their way back in League One. The question I have to ask you, Jay, was it worth it for this great team? Was the glory of that 4 or 5 year period of unbelievable? Would you take that, knowing that you had maybe 10 years or so in the doldrums to follow?
10 years of hell. Yes, I would. Absolutely. I mean, I can die having seen my team win an FA Cup, and you kind of can't take that away from us in that sense. So, yeah, absolutely, I would. I suppose there's a different question. As a fan, you didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. You just didn't know. We didn't until it all came out at the end there. But as painful as it was, and it was utter, I mean, we were hours from being liquidated in the High Court. But if I take it purely on a football following basis, the 12-year-old within me watching my team, I had some amazing experiences. And as I say, having grown up as a kid watching FA Cup finals, to see your team actually do it live is something is unbelievable. So yeah, I'm going to say yes. Of course I am. The sensible header is obviously going to say absolutely no way. We run ourselves in a self-sufficient manner, and we never do that, and we won't do that again. I mean, the hopeful conclusion to the Redknapp era and financial debacle is that we are very well run now. We are not in debt, and it's probably why we are still languishing in League One right now, because we're not blowing stupid money on players.
Well, it's definitely so. Well, we should come to ranking this team, I think. And for anyone who's not listened to the pod before, we have the 5 categories of greatness: all-time greats, true greats. We have in the middle, which is touch of greatness, below that edge of greatness, and then the blinkered greats. But I'm sure we won't be touching that category today. So, Jamie, what's your thinking on this?
Well, I'm thinking you've just qualified that we're not going to the last one, which is good, because I was worried. You may steer the agenda in that direction. One of the reasons why I love doing these pods with people like Jamie coming on is just to get this incredible insight and feel what this particular team meant to somebody who's lived through it and, gone through the joy and obviously the pain of the whole thing. And it really brings to life what these teams are and how great they are. And it kind of gives you a nice perspective. I think some things we haven't touched on is that in the 07-08 season, Portsmouth never were outside the top 10 in the Premier League. I think once the league settled after the first few games, they were always competing comfortably in the top 10 spaces. And I think, if it wouldn't have been the focus on the FA Cup for all of the right reasons, their league form probably would have been a bit stronger at the end, where I think they lost their last 3 or 4 games and they could have pushed on and finished even higher up the table. But I understand you want to focus and put your eggs in the basket of the FA Cup, and it makes complete sense. They also went on a great run in that season that we haven't talked about. I think it was about 11 or 12 games where they didn't lose in the Premier League. I think for any team to do that is incredible. You know, we take it for granted that teams like Manchester City and Liverpool are able to do that quite regularly now. But, you know, the Premier League is and always has been so competitive. It's difficult to kind of put those runs together, especially when you're, you know, a team like Portsmouth who's establishing itself in the lower reaches of the top 10. The FA Cup run is interesting. I have there's another fact I'm probably going to say and get wrong. I think they're the only team to have won the FA Cup by winning every single round by a single goal.
I think we won one of the earlier rounds 2-1. Every other round from that was a 1-0. You're absolutely right.
The single goal, I mean, so even in that round, it was a single goal that decided the tie. No replays. Every game's been won by the odd goal.
Single goal. Sorry, yes.
But you're right. Everything else was 1-0. Although we didn't touch on the dodgy sending off in the third round versus Ipswich, which I don't know if you remember that. That looks a bit of a weird one, but I don't even think it was Martin Atkinson that day. I think we're talking about a team that's come to the edge of greatness and gone beyond it, and they've touched it and they've experienced it. And Jamie definitely brings light to touching that greatness. And with a great manager who, when he did leave to go to Spurs, took a few Tottenham players with him. One of them, Nico Crancher, who he seems to take everywhere with him. I think Eric Knapp signed him 3 times. So he had a fondness for some of these players that he wanted to kind of keep the gang together. I think touch of greatness is where I'm going to land on this one. I think this is definitely in the middle bracket.
South Coast, Jamie, where can you make the case for even greater?
No, I can't actually. To be honest, I mean, I'll find your. Remind me of your categories again. They're not the easiest for me to work out.
Or for anyone.
That middle one, I think, isn't it? Touch of greatness.
Yeah, touch of greatness.
To be honest, that's where I would trying to remain impartial in my comment on that. Yeah, I think I would put the same. I think there was a touch of greatness about them. There's the FA Cup winning team, but for me, that, you know, as I think I mentioned earlier, the greatest football I saw, and because it's an easier one when you're playing against teams in the second tier, you're not playing the top teams. But the way that we won that league and the way we played was superb. So yeah, I'm gonna go with namesake Jamie there on that one as well. I'm very happy to agree with him on that.
If we had Pat Nevin here, of course, he'd be bringing up financial doping, and you would be automatically taken to the bottom.
You know, on that, we haven't touched on that. Sorry, Graham, I'm jumping in. This is a topic in football that does irk me some, I have to say, because it's great when owners come in, or custodians, however you want to classify them, and they kind of pump lots of energy and money into the team. But when you've got this mismanagement going on, and clearly Portsmouth have suffered more than once on the back of that, the penalty is with the club. The penalty is with the fans. It's not the guys that have been, or the girls that have been running the team poorly that pay the penalty generally. It's the club. You know, Portsmouth deducted 9 points in one season, I think 10 points in another season, which takes them down the leagues, and the fans are punished. And it's more of a serious subject, probably not for this podcast, because we don't like to do serious stuff, but it does irritate me that these people can just play with people's emotions the way they do. You know, highs and lows, because they are responsible for the high ones as well.
Yes, I think. I mean, you are right. Harry Redknapp. I love Harry Redknapp. I have to say, I think he's. He stood in a minority of thinking that he should have been England manager when, at some point, I would think he would have been the best England manager you could have in terms, if only for a tournament. I mean, clearly he can't run the team for a couple of years. Something's going to go right. Something's going to catch up with him. But in terms of not just his man management, but the way he played the game, the way he set up. I mean, it's ironic actually to win the FA Cup with a series of 1-0s, because actually that's not what Harry Redknapp's teams have ever been like. So I put aside my Pat Nevin concerns, and I too happily join you in that. So Harry Redknapp's Portsmouth, touch of greatness. So we have a little bonus team to look at as well. So we're going through the archives and shine a light on some stories which aren't really known, even less known than Portsmouth. Who knew that there was such a thing? And Jamie, you got a special team. This is going back to India, and it really is. I described it in the opening as India's alternative version to Escape to Victory, which in some ways it is, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit, but it's an incredible story.
Yeah, Mohun Bagan, and films have been made about Mohun Bagan. So You're absolutely spot on. Not escaped to victory, but there have been some.
Was John Walker? John Walker was in it, surely.
Michael Caine was in it. A leaner version of Michael Caine was in it. There are some stories that just need to be told, and it's no wonder that there are stories that have been made into films about Mohun Bagan from 1911. Just to kind of set the context, so when football was developing in the mid 1800s, it was at the time that Britain had a pretty big empire, and part of that empire was in India. So they would take football to India, most notably Kolkata, where the regiments would be based, and recreation time was spent organising football leagues and playing football. So every single regiment had its team. Quite obviously, where you've got this new game in this new country, you get curiosity. And the local Indians started taking an interest in the game. And one individual in particular, and my pronunciation could let me down again, a gentleman called Nagendra Prasad Sabha Hikari, who was a bit of a student of the game. So he was working closely with the British Empire in various roles, and he had fallen in love with the game of football and was a bit of a student of it. So he started encouraging the local community in and around Calcutta and beyond to take up football and start playing football. And they started slowly organising themselves into teams. So whilst you've got this backdrop of English football going on in northern India, and you've got these regiment teams playing in organised official cup competitions. In fact, the cup that we're going to talk about, the IFA Cup, is the fourth oldest cup competition in the world. The Durant Cup, which is also played in India, is the fifth oldest cup competition in the world, still in existence. So these cup competitions that were organised go right back to the history of the game. I think you've got the FA Cup and the Scottish FA Cup, which are the two that predate it. So teams are getting organised in India, but they're not allowed to participate in the IFA. So even though Nagendra Prasad has bended the ear of the Brits in terms of shaping what the Indian Football Association would become, that's still very much a British league, an English league, and locals aren't allowed to take part, and you wouldn't have mixed teams. That would be an absolute no-no. And all this is happening in the early 1900s when the tension is really growing in India, because there's this movement towards independence. And these teams in India are started to garner a bit of interest. And one of them is Mohun Bagan. And they win a few early lower level cups in the early 1900s. And then they get invited to play in the IFA Shield, which is an Indian team playing against British teams. And to this point, for the 20, 30 years that the cup had been going, it had been won by these regiment teams. And then in 1911, this miracle takes place. Mohun Bagan, they've brought in a new guy, Shibaz Badari, who's an organizer, but also a player, plays up front. And Mohun Bagan are playing in the classic 2-3-5 formation. And they've studied how the Brits are playing football. And they enter in the IFA Shield. They're not seen to be any stretch of imagination a team that's going to challenge for the Shield in that particular season. But they win their first game against St Saviour's Institute, 3-0. And they look pretty decent doing it. And then they go on into the second round on the 14th of July, 4 days afterwards, and they beat a team called Rangers FC. And it's at this point that the story starts really building into some significance, and the attention of the team is captured the nation, and the nation which is also looking to find a route to freedom.
And it is an extraordinary element, because as you say, the history at that time adds this extra weight of expectation to them. And it is a story where you suddenly have a wave of enthusiasm that goes with it, because it's not just, something from nowhere. Almost the whole of India gets involved in this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's the time where the railways are being set up. So people are catching wind of this. The stories are going out in the newspapers a couple of days after the games, and people are wanting to go to Calcutta to witness this Indian team, this native team that is taking on the British regiments, the teams that are established, that have won these tournaments, and in front of proper crowds as well. 20, 30,000 people were turning up to watch these games. So it's a big interest, and games that would normally be, 1 or 2 rupees to watch were going up to like 10 or 15 rupees, because there was demand. Again, we're seeing how football can commercialize itself, but obviously there was something slightly different here because we had the local Indians that were cheering on their local team against these imperial regime that had been cast upon them, where they always thought that they would be subservient to their masters, and suddenly things are starting to look a bit different.
So how many games do they have to play to win the Shield?
So they play a first round, a second round, a quarterfinal, a semi-final, and a final. And it's worth noting in the second round where they beat Rangers 2-1, Rangers actually were awarded 3 penalties in that game. And the Mohun Bagan goalkeeper, Hirala Mukherjee, saves all 3 of the penalties. Now, I can't find anything in my research to suggest that there was anything unduly going on. It could have been they were genuinely 3 penalties. But the fact that you've had 3 penalties to the same team in a game and they've been saved by the goalkeeper is pretty incredible. I mean, I can't think of many occasions where that happened.
That is quite impressive. It is sort of, I was reading a small bit about it, and what puts it into context is, I think in the, because you don't often get this in the match reports, in the final itself, they go a goal behind to goal scored by Sergeant Jackson of East Yorkshire Regiment. You know,
The very one.
Sergeant Jackson, who's very much the Guy Whittingham of the team at the time.
He brought himself into the army rather than out of the army.
So Sergeant Jackson gives the British oppressors the lead, but Mohun recover from that.
They do almost immediately, and they kind of level it almost straight away. And what is also brilliant is at the time, because the demand was so high, and I mean, you'll read some reports where they're saying that 60,000 watched the game, and the referee, I think, kind of estimated was more like 20,000. But what we know is that a lot of people were there, and there's a lot of people outside. And the way they communicated, obviously, predates smartphones a little bit. The way they were able to communicate what was going on inside the ground was using kites. So the crowd inside the ground would have kites with the Mohun Bagan colours, maroon and green. And when Mohun scored, the kites were raised. Loads of kites rose up. So they were able to share the news with the wider crowd that wasn't able to see what was going on the pitch by using a system of kites.
I love that idea. So if the crowd roared, you weren't sure if that was a terrible offside decision or you just won an amazing tackle. You had to wait for the kites to go up to know that the goal had gone in.
It's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, the ingenuity into that bit and the coordination. You know, somebody must have had that idea, or maybe it's embedded into Indian culture at that particular time. How, you know, a form of communication at sporting events. It's a wonderful, wonderful idea.
I'm sure we've all been caught outside games where you've just not been able to get through the turnstile quick enough, and you hear the crowd roar, and you don't know whether that's a goal or not. Maybe they should bring that back into some of the games here. Look for the kites. If there's no kites, there's no goal. You're fine.
Extraordinary thing. So they end up winning the Shield, and which is like extraordinary upset, really, in one form or another.
Yeah, it was an upset. So Abilas Ghosh scores the final goal, and Mohun Bagan win 2-1. And it's the first time that an Indian team has won the IFA Shield. So yeah, it's a massive moment, and it's one of those moments that transcends the actual game itself, because this is really cited in Indian history as the moment when the independence movement really started to garner and take shape. I mean, there was already stuff going on in Calcutta at that time. Shortly after this game, the capital was moved from Calcutta, which it was at the time, and went to New Delhi because of the movement, the unrest that was going on. Mahatma Gandhi arrived back in India in 1915 from South Africa, and then the whole movement starts taking shape. But if you were to look at the history of the road to independence for India in 1947, lots of people have wrote articles that cites this football match that is the symbol, because it gave the people belief that they can beat the English. One of the things we haven't mentioned, which is absolutely extraordinary, is that the Mohun Bagan players didn't play with any boots on. They played barefoot. So every single game they played barefoot.
I was going to talk about this. I was going to ask the question. Whilst you've been talking, I've been mesmerised by the photo, the team photo, which I will put on the social, and I've shared it in the chat here. It is extraordinary because they are there in bare feet, which then did beg they're in their football kit, but in bare feet. And I'm thinking, like, that's got to smart, hasn't it? That's got to smart when you've got the other fantastic thing because it's an absolutely massive achievement, and they've got a pretty massive shield as a prize for it because they have won. The shield is bigger than one of the players.
That's a great team photo, isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's 1 meter. I think it's 1 meter high. The shield. It's incredible.
I'm loving the face furniture there as well. They're all sporting excellent moustaches there. Fantastic.
It's very impressive. They haven't got matching. 3 of them are in white shorts for reasons we don't quite know, but.
Well, the reason they're not wearing boots, it could be why they've got mismatched shorts, is because they just couldn't afford it. They didn't have the money to buy the appropriate footwear to play the game. So they were in a situation where they could only play it in bare feet. And that was
insane,
the standard practice into the 1920s as well for Indian teams. It wasn't really commonplace for Indian teams to wear football boots.
You know, I don't like walking on carpet without slippers on, let alone playing on a rocky dirt pitch, people trying to kick you, and you haven't got anything on your feet. Huge respect. I already know where I'm going to rank these guys, by the way.
It's kind of like Zola Budd running against Mary Decker, isn't it? It's kind of, you know.
It is, but this one has a happier ending. You know, this one
does. I mean, incredible achievement to win that shield. What sort of becomes of this team?
They exist today. They play in the Indian Super League today. They've won a couple of championships. The Indians, India has a very up and down relationship with football. Mohun Bagan has won a number of cups and championships where they've existed in India, but the shape of the championships has changed on a regular basis. There was a golden period in the 50s and 60s where the national team were competing in the Olympics, which they prioritized over the World Cup at that particular time. They saw the Olympics as the bigger the tournament, and that's where they focused their football team to be sent. They also won some Asian games as well that were organized, and they've won some kind of regional competitions where they're playing against Pakistan and Sri Lanka. But then after that, it kind of is up and down. And I think the India winning the Cricket World Cup in 1983 is quite damaging for football. So after that, cricket really moves into a different area in terms of like the prime sport. Football is a massive sport in India, but it doesn't come close to what the profile that cricket gets. Mohun Bagan still exists. They play today. They still wear the maroon and green in the Indian Super League.
I mean, they are truly a groundbreaking side, aren't they? We should have a go at ranking them, I think. South Coast, Jamie, to give you your
I'm gonna put them right up there for the reasons mentioned. I think I mean, if you take it into the political context of the whole thing, I think that for me that automatically puts them up there. I mean, that's this, as you said, Jamie, that transcends football in many ways. So that puts them in greatness. I would put them in greatness purely by their moustaches anyway. So, you know, it's a double whammy there for me. And then you throw in the fact that they were scampering around on muddy dirt pitches with rocks and twigs on. That makes me shiver. That, you know, that's three ticks in the box for me there.
I'm inclined to agree with Jamie. I think I probably have. I'm not sure. I don't think they can quite go up to all-time great. I mean, there's a legacy. I mean, the legacy goes beyond football, I think, really. But the achievement is just extraordinary. And to do it bare feet, that's just ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. So I think I'd have them in true greats. Jamie, what about you?
Yeah, I was worried that you were going to kind of steer him towards our bargain bucket, and I was going to set the bar. If I had the opportunity to kind of steer the conversation in terms of how we rank them, I was going to set the bar quite high at true greats as well. So I'm grateful that you've done the work for me, and I haven't even had to play my wild card, which is there's actually a national holiday called Mohun Bagan Day on the 29th of July every year to celebrate this achievement. So there's a national day for this football team. And I don't know many football teams that have a national day, which is incredible.
Superb.
I mean, most Oxford fans take the 20th of April off to mark the Milk Cup, but aside from that,
it's not. Can you get me back on when you do the Oxford one?
I want
to be there for that. Thanks.
Strong views.
Looking forward to talking about the early ages of dodgy football sponsorship as well, the Milk Cup. I mean, that's just great. But going back to
everything we've achieved and all we're known for is Wang.
That's a beautiful kit, by the way. That will definitely go on our beautiful kit list.
Definitely.
Mohun Bagan, 1911. So, Graham, everything we've already mentioned. This is a team that definitely transcended football. It carried the hopes of a massive nation on its shoulders, and it triggered, if you look at the accounts from many Indian historians, it triggered the events that would lead to independence, which is incredible. And it's a David and Goliath story. They've beaten the big boys at their own game.
Very definitely. So Mohun Bagan, 1911, true greats. We have one last thing that we like to do at this. We like to reflect back on some of the things we've talked about, and we imagine, just imagine the three of us here. We get a chance to head back to a former holiday, a place where back in our youth we enjoyed great times in a holiday resort, a ski resort somewhere, and we head back and we find ourselves accidentally stumbling into some kind of hot tub time machine, and we can go back. We can go back to any of these games. I mean, let's ignore the fact that the hot tub time machine only takes you back to 1986. That's the... I'm going to ignore that. So, assuming you had a wider range of places you could go to, let's start with you, Jamie, Rooney. Where would you want to go back to?
I think the bitter man in me would want to go back to Manchester in March of 2008 and influence Martin Atkinson to make probably some better decisions, or to help Michael Carrick keep on his feet long enough to toe poke over the line. But I'm not bitter. I'm over that. I've seen lots of great things. So I'm pleased. I'm pleased for Portsmouth. I genuinely am. I mean that sincerely. I can't resist history. You know this, Graham. I do it all the time. I'd want to go to India. I'd want to go and witness the kites and, maybe take some boots in my bag and, make a few rupees on the side.
It's a good one. Jamie, you've got a host of choices. And of course, well, will you go back to somewhere that you have already been, or do you go somewhere that you didn't? Where would you go back to, Jamie?
Well, the irony is, Jamie Rooney stole my thunder, because I wasn't physically at the game at Old Trafford for that quarter-final. And it was one of the only big game moments. I was there at Wigan when we stayed up. I was there for the championship winning. I was there for all the semi-final, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't there for that game. So I would go to Old Trafford and witness that game with my own eyes.
Yes, I think quite rightly. So I think I would have to go a few months further on. I'd have loved to have been down at Frassam for the day AC Milan came to town. Absolutely special moment. So I think that would have to be my choice. But with spoiled for choices there, it's a good option. But part of me does have one eye on the barefoot battle of happening in India a century before. Jamie from the South Coast, thank you so much for your time and your input. It's been really enjoyable today. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you both very much indeed. I've enjoyed it.
Jamie, thank you for your facts as always.
I'm very grateful for Jamie's insight into his journey with Portsmouth in that particular season. I've really enjoyed it. So it's been a great one.
Yeah, that's great. So that is all we got time for. Please get in touch with any comments, additions, or corrections about any of the teams we've talked about today, or any suggestions on other great teams that we should cover. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review, share it with a friend, pass it through any means in front of getting other people to listen to it. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.